Richard Charles Hanifin was born June 15, 1931, in Denver, the third in a family of 4 children. His parents, Edward and Dorothy, were active in St. Philomena Parish, and the family maintained a close relationship with the pastor, Monsignor William Higgins.
I came from a family that was really Catholic. Catholic school education, and my parents, I don't think, ever missed Mass on Sunday. I can't recall it ever happening. And it was never a question in our minds as kids whether you went to Mass on Sunday or not. That was a given. And we never resented that, not even as teenagers. It was just a part of our life. My dad was a graduate of Regis, now university, but college in those days, and was close to the Jesuit community as well. So we had regular bridge guests at our house. The Jesuits that liked to play bridge would come to the house and play bridge with my folks. Monsignor Higgins at St. Philomena's in Denver was very close to our family. He brought my mom into the church. She was a convert from the Episcopal faith.
The young Richard attended Regis High School and Regis College, where he was trained in Ignatian spirituality and learned the importance of silence in hearing God's voice.
I was on a junior in college retreat between semesters and was being silent and alone. And in the middle of the night, out for a little walk, just before bed, it just hit me like a ton of bricks that I should be a priest.
After attending St. Thomas Seminary, he was ordained a priest for the Archdiocese of Denver on June 6, 1959, and was soon assigned to the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Denver. For nearly the next 10 years, he was engrossed in graduate studies, first earning his master's degree in counseling at the Catholic University in Washington, D.C., and then a licentiate in canon law at the Pontifical Lateran University in Rome.
When I was a senior in college, the bishop asked me to go to Rome to study theology in Rome. And the Bishop Veer, asked Bishop Hanifin to go to Rome to study canon law. And so he had been ordained, I think, at that time for about 11 or 12 years. Interestingly enough, we went from New York to Italy on the Michelangelo, an Italian liner. That was the way you traveled over there because you had a big trunk, you couldn't put a trunk on a plane, so you put it on a boat. And so for 7 days we were on the Michelangelo together, along with a few other seminarians who were also going to the North American College, and also the vice rector was on that same boat. So, but most of the other seminarians were on a different boat. So there were just a few of us on that Michelangelo. But I got a little seasick, so a lot of time, part of the time I spent in the cabin, when the seas were a little rough on the Atlantic, because it was like late September, something like that. So, but anyway, when we arrived in Naples, then we both took a bus to Rome, and Bishop Hanifin went to the Casa Santa Maria, which is the graduate house for priests, where they live and where they study. And then I went to the North American College on the Janiculo, where the seminarians live and study. And so from time to time, we would have like diocesan dinners. So like on Thanksgiving, everybody from Colorado, everybody from St. Thomas, plus Bishop Hanifin would get together and go out to dinner to celebrate, as a kind of a group. We would spend time together, and of course, Bishop Hanifin was the life of the party. He always is the life of the party, and so it was great to be with him, and he was very supportive of us as a group and of the seminarians and so on.
After returning to Denver in 1968, he worked closely with Archbishop James Casey in the Denver Chancery until 1974, and was eventually named Chancellor. Then came the moment that would change the course of his life, when Pope Paul VI appointed him auxiliary bishop.
One Friday afternoon about 4 or 4:30, he said, "Dick, come into my office. I just need to talk to you for a minute." I said, "Okay." I went in. And he said, do you know anything about Abercorn? And I said, you mean Habercorn? That's my barber, Doc Habercorn. He said, I'm not talking about your barber. I'm talking about Abercorn, Scotland. I said, no, I don't know anything about Abercorn, Scotland. He said, well, you're going to be the Bishop of Abercorn.
That was your titular diocese?
That was my titular diocese as an auxiliary. And the bottom dropped out of my life. I said, "What? I don't understand what you're saying." And he said, well, Pope wants to name you my auxiliary, and Abercorn's going to be your titular diocese, and the Holy Father wants to know your answer. And I said, how soon? And he said, well, certainly it's Friday, as soon as you can. And I said, well, how about Monday? And he said, well, let me know by Monday, because I have to let him know, or you have to let him know.
His episcopal ordination took place on September 20th, 1974, at the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, with his parents present. 2 years after being ordained an auxiliary bishop, he was appointed vicar for the southern region of the Archdiocese of Denver, which encompassed Colorado Springs and surrounding areas. With that assignment, the long, arduous process of laying the groundwork for the Diocese of Colorado Springs began.
Between 1976 and 1984, most of my time was spent trying to get the parishes to work in a collaborative fashion with one another in areas where they had not, perhaps in the past, and to kind of give the people in this area an identity. There is a sort of a grace of being bishop that people will unite around a bishop.
Looking back, probably Archbishop Casey figured that it would happen eventually, and that's why he sent Bishop Hanifin down here to kind of prepare the way, which he really did. So he worked with the priests and tried to build up the community of the priests down here. So they would meet, I think, every month. He kept everybody smiling, which was quite an achievement for a bishop to keep all the priests smiling.
After serving as regional vicar in Colorado Springs for 8 years, Bishop Hanifin was thrust into the spotlight when Pope John Paul II approved the formation of a new diocese in 1983. The Diocese of Colorado Springs would extend to Douglas County, the Eastern Plains to the Kansas border, and west to Leadville.
1983, on November 10th, I remember very well, I was up in Denver to attend a priest's meeting of the Archdiocese and received a phone call from the Apostolic Delegation, it was called in those days. Monsignor Barbaro called and said to me that the Holy Father would like to have me be the first bishop of Colorado Springs, and wanted to know if I would accept. Well, of course, you don't turn the Holy Father down, but I was happy to have the opportunity to be the founding bishop of the diocese, so I said yes.
On January 30th, 1984, a Mass took place at the Pikes Peak Center in downtown Colorado Springs, which established the Diocese of Colorado Springs and installed Bishop Hanifin as its first bishop.
First of all, we had rented out the Pikes Peak Center, which held about 2,500 if you opened up the stage and everything. So it was large, and then KRDO Television had agreed to do an exclusive coverage, full-length coverage of it, but they were limited to 2 hours because they had to meet their news schedule. And so we scheduled it so that that could all be done. So everything was kind of timed down very closely. Well, we're standing in line, and the Archbishop had the translation of the papal apostolic letters, which are, in short, were called the Papal Bull.
This is the letter of actual appointment.
It was the Holy Father's words appointing me as the bishop and establishing the diocese. Right. And it's called a bull. That's just a alliteration. It's just a literal translation from bola, which means official seal. But in English, we just say bull. So he's standing there, and one of the sisters that was helping to organize the procession said, Archbishop, it doesn't look good for you to be holding a piece of paper in the procession. I'll have it for you. He said, I prefer to hold it myself. She said, no, it won't get lost. So in we go. It comes time for him to read the apostolic letters. And he got up there, and they had the wrong translation in front of him. He had his own translation, and he wanted it. So he said, I'm looking for this translation that I had when I was...
This is the one he handed off at the
This was
beginning.
when he handed off.
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't find it.
I'm sorry to delay a little bit because we have a timetable, and at the same time, I'm waiting for a little paper that should be here, and it's not here.
And Monsignor John Slattery was the MC for the ceremony, and I've never seen him so pale. For 3 minutes, we had dead air on television, which is a frightening thing. 3 minutes it took to find this thing. It seemed like an eternity. So when he got it, he read it. And when I got up at the time for me to make remarks, I just turned to him and I said,
Archbishop Laghi, this is cattle country, but never before have we lost a papal bull.
And so everybody laughed, but he did not laugh. The
He didn't get it, or he didn't appreciate it?
He didn't get it.
Oh, he didn't get it. Oh.
The Archbishop said he didn't get the connection. And, when somebody turns to you in a language that's not your first language and says something that you don't understand, and the auditorium comes unglued, because they did laugh, you think they're laughing at you. So the Archbishop said, I saved your bacon, friend. I explained to the nuncio what you meant. Well, and World Youth Day in Denver in 1993, this is years later, now Cardinal Laghi's walking through Celebration Square in Denver. He's got 2 other cardinals with him, and he sees me in the square, and he says, Bishop Hanifan, tell them how we lost the bull. Tell them how we lost the bull.
The newly created diocese was entrusted to the patronage of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which had a deeply personal significance for Bishop Hanifan.
Well, in a way, the patroness of the diocese already was the Blessed Mother. How could it be anybody else with St. Mary's Church being the mother church of the diocese? And this is simply a title of the Blessed Mother, Our Lady of Guadalupe. For me, the expression of love, particularly for our poor, was the outstanding image that you get from Our Lady of Guadalupe, because the story of Juan Diego and the Blessed Mother appearing in Mexico to the poor Indians under the conquistadores of Spain was a great image, it seemed to me, that our diocese should adopt. If we were going to have the Blessed Mother as our patroness, it surely ought to be Our Lady of Guadalupe for all that she stands for.
Once the excitement of establishing the new diocese had faded away, the real work of setting up an organizational structure began.
First of all, if there was anyone in the United States any more naive than I was about starting a new diocese, I don't know who it would have been. I didn't really have a clue what that would involve, although I had worked in the Denver Chancery for 7 years and I could see some of the issues that a bishop looks at. Soon the Archdiocese had pretty well decided that we should be on our own. So we lost the financial bookkeeping and everything, a lot of the services, the health, insurance management, the financial bookkeeping and everything. We lost all that within about a year and a half. And my hat's off to Bob Dörfler and his crew, because they had to step up with very little notice and take it all over.
In the first few years of the diocese's existence, a main concern was establishing new parishes to serve the growing number of Catholics in the Pikes Peak region and the south suburbs of Denver.
Yeah. Well, building a parish in our diocese meant you had to do it without enough priests. So several of the parishes that we began in the diocese, we began without a resident priest. And we began to use what Canon 503, I think it was, of the Code of Canon Law, said that where there is a lack of priests, the bishop might assign qualified deacons or lay people to manage the parish as long as it was under the direction of a priest pastor somewhere. So we use that canon a lot. For example, Pax Christi in Highlands Ranch, St. Francis in Rockrimmon, and then St. Patrick's, Father Mike Walsh was there when we were getting ready to start St. Patrick's, and that it was his Irish connection with Bonnie Fitzpatrick that got us the land, which was not enough land really for a parish, but it was what she was going to give us. And it was a nice location, good hill. So he started, but the real building of the parish was Father John Slattery, God rest him. And he built it around Cursillo. He got the parish to make Cursillos. And then he took his leadership from the Corsiistas, and he built a very personable parish. And out of that, they began to, they had it over the Yakitori restaurant. And so we called it St. Yakitori's. And you'd say Mass there, and the odor would just be coming up and people would be getting hungry. So, but he did such a beautiful job of building that parish. And then Father Don Dunn followed him, and it just burgeoned after that.
While the workload could be overwhelming, there was also joy and excitement. For one thing, the newly established diocese had a variety of vibrant lay apostolates, such as the Cursillo movement. Bishop Hanifin had led Cursillo retreats ever since attending one himself in the late 1960s.
I was so touched by that, and so I was infected by Cursillo, and I worked them a lot after that and loved it even more. So it changed my life, and I learned how to hug. I mean, we didn't hug in my family, but before we got through with me, we did. But we didn't hug, And I learned the abrazo, and I learned the Spanish culture, and decided that I wanted to learn Spanish, and just fell in love with it.
Bishop Hanifin later formed the Colorado Springs Council for Black Catholics to provide a way for Black parishioners to support each other in the faith.
I would say Mass at St. Joe's in Southgate, and there was a lovely woman there. Here I'm not going to remember her name, but I got to know her. She was an African-American woman, very loyal to the parish, just very much involved. And she used to just say how Black Catholics were really hurting. They were ignored or avoided in church, and they knew it. And for the most part, they were from Louisiana, because the French had settled Louisiana, and so the slaves became Catholic. And so there was just a group of them here, and they were lovely people. And so we decided we'd get that council started so that they could get some of the Black bishops to come and be with them, and which we did. And they had annual get-togethers, and they had regular meetings, and they bonded with each other. And so I love that. I thought that was really great that they were able to do that.
Bishop Hanifin and priests from the Diocese of Colorado Springs would make an annual retreat at Sacred Heart Jesuit Retreat House in Sedalia, Colorado. In 1994, a transitional deacon from the Diocese of Grand Island also happened to be making a 30-day Ignatian retreat at the same time as the group from Colorado Springs.
Yes, I remember very clearly meeting Bishop Hanifin the first time. I was a fourth-year seminarian. I was a transitional deacon, and I was allowed during the month of January to skip a J-term class and go to a 30-day Ignatian retreat. So I went to Sedalia, and during one of those weeks, Bishop Hanifin brought up all his priests to celebrate, I think, the 10th year anniversary of the diocese. And so I knew all these guys were here from a new diocese, and I'm sitting down at Mass one day, and there's a guy in blue jeans and a t-shirt next to me. And he says, "Hi, my name is Dick." And I said, "Well, hi, I'm Jim." So the next day at Mass, then I look and Dick is presiding, and he has on the zucchetto and the mitre, and I thought, oh, Dick is a bishop. I always remember just the joy that he had with his priests, and there was a palpable love. They really loved each other. I could just sense that as a seminarian, like I wanted to be part of that.
Bishop Hanafin also had a behind-the-scenes view of the events leading up to and during Pope John Paul II's visit to Denver for World Youth Day in August 1993.
First of all, Pope John Paul was told by his intelligence that there was going to be tremendous demonstrations against him in Denver, that he was going to face opposition just about everywhere he went. So that it was really a sense, he came with, like he did so much, he just plowed his way ahead despite opposition. And that's what he thought he was coming to. But in the meantime, the mayor of Denver had called in the gangs, and he told them all that they were through. He'd come after them if they did anything while World Youth Day was going on. So they cleared the deck from that. So they reduced the crime so the police could work with the event. So thank God for the mayor. The next thing that the Archdiocese had to do was to get past the Douglas County commissioners and developers, because it was going to be at the Cherry Creek Reservoir in Douglas County. And they gave the Archbishop a tough time, but they got it pulled off. And at one time I got a call saying, could they come down here? It scared me to death, you know. And they said, no, we'll underwrite the cost. And I said, well, okay. But it meant that the Pope had to come down here and go to St. Mary's and visit the cathedral, which would have been a whole security thing, you know. Anyway, we got by without that. I didn't need that. And the things I remember from it were, first of all, Cardinal Hume on the vigil night, when we're standing in a cold, kind of semi-rainy night, and Cardinal Hume is dancing, Cardinal from London, dancing to stay warm, and just a delightful human being, you know. And then I remember at World Youth Day, the Mass on Sunday, how all the kids were passing out. The girls didn't want to go to the bathroom because it was so far to the potties, and they weren't drinking, so they wouldn't have to go, and they were passing out from dehydration. It was sad.
Because this was August.
It was August, and it was hot, you know. It was a hot day. Yeah, but the thing that was most moving to me was when he helicoptered into the stadium at Mile High, and I couldn't believe the electricity that was involved in those kids and in us. We were so moved. That was such a moving thing to watch with those kids. It was an amazing time.
In 2009, Catholic Charities of Central Colorado paid tribute to Bishop Hanafin for naming their new self-sufficiency center in his honor. The Hanafin Center is now home to several programs and services for those in our community who are struggling with homelessness and other challenges.
Father Don Dunn, who was head of Catholic Charities at the time, I had a friend. And then he came to me and he said, you know, the board met last night and they'd like to name the new service center, the Hanafin Center, after you. And we want your permission. And I said, well, what good would it do? And he said, I think it'll help us raise money. And I said, that's okay with me.
In 2001, Pope John Paul II granted Bishop Hanafin's request to retire earlier than the standard age of 75 due to health concerns. Bishop Michael Sheridan was named first coadjutor, then ordinary, of the Diocese of Colorado Springs in January 2002.
Yeah, somebody asked me, you know, they said, how long did it take you to get used to retiring? And I said, about 10 minutes. For me, it was a blessing. I had asked permission 2 years early to retire because of health. You know, I'm diabetic, and that doesn't get better. And so I literally said to the Holy Father, I've been here, I think it was 17 years. Well, actually, when you count the fact when I was an auxiliary, I'd been here 26 years, I think, or something like that. And I said that I'm the only bishop they knew. I'm the only style they know, and that's not necessarily good. I knew that my style didn't have to be the style. So I actually said that in the letter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had no problem stepping aside. But I did tell the guys that I was planning to write the letter to retire. I didn't know when I would hear. Kiddingly, I said, knowing what Pope John Paul II might think of my style, I'll probably get the answer by email. And it did come pretty fast. I was pleased and yet wondered. At any rate, I told them that. But then they were kind of mad. They said, "You're abandoning us." Some of them said that, you know. And I said, well, nothing lasts forever.
Por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores.